All right, can everyone see my screen? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
And can I be heard properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So I formally welcome you all to the first session of IDL Master Classes. And there's a couple of things that we're going to discuss in terms of format, in terms of speaker roles, in terms of how you're supposed to go about debating effectively, and how you can maximize the chances of winning certain rounds through certain techniques that are used by debaters mostly and are found to be helpful for a lot of us who debate. All right. To begin with, I think the most important aspect of this particular tournament and the most common like the most common thing that people have questions about is the format. So I need you all to understand the format for once and for all and what it entails. So how we're going to go about this format is very simple. There is no fancy name to the format, which means you don't have to equate it to like Oxford parliamentary or find some sort of like a correlation in other well-established formats. This is simply a one-on-one format wherein there's two people in the room, in the debating room at a time, and there's an adjudicator. The two people would be divided into for and against. So there's one person who is going for the motion or the topic, and there's another person who's going against the topic. There are certain terms that you need to familiarize yourself with. For example, motion. So if you used to call it a topic so far, just please get used to this equivalent of equivalent, which is a motion. Like it's the same as a topic, but the motion is what the common parlance is in the debating circuit. So we call it the motion. So whenever I say motion, I mean the topic that you would be given for the debate. Okay. So like you're either for the motion or against the motion. Regardless, you are supposed to deliver 3 minute long speeches. Now there's something called the constructive speech. What is the constructive speech then? Is the speech wherein you uh like defend your stance, which means whichever side you're going from, you put forth your argumentation in the constructive speech. So whatever you've prepared, however you've researched, whatever conclusion you've come to, however you choose to defend the side you're on, all of that will make a part of your constructive speech. Ideally, what you can do with the constructive speech is have three arguments, give 1 minute to every argument, so that if one argument falls, I mean, one thing that you don't want to see yourself doing is giving is providing one argument to the adjudicator for one round in 3 minutes. I think have at least three arguments and give 1 minute to each, like equal weightage in terms of time to each. That's how you can go about possibly the constructive speech. But if you have a better tactic, go ahead with that. I don't mind. It's just for the people who don't know how to go about delivering a 3 minute long effective speech. All right. Then on to the reply speech. Once the constructive speeches are done, which means that the government or the person going for the motion delivers their constructive speech first. So I'm sure a lot of us, almost everyone of us, know that it's the proposition speaker or the for the motion person who starts the debate, which means the constructive speech first comes from proposition, then the opposition constructive speech will come, and then after both the constructive speeches have ended from both the sides, the replies will begin, which means the reply will also be started by the government side. Right now, in the reply, and this applies to any of the sides, like both government and opposition, you're supposed to rebut what the other side has said with respect to your case. Now this could be in terms of how they have rebutted your case, or this could be in terms of what they bring to the table from their side to defend their case, and then you have to rebut it. You have to ensure that your initial arguments stand even after the other side has tried to deconstruct them in one of their speeches, right? That comes between your constructive and reply. So that's the structure. Now, whatever pointers here there are here, I hope all of these make sense. Duration is clear. Reply speech duration again clear. One-on-one format because only two people in the debate room debating against one another. Stance are only two, government or opposition. And the stance will be given to you by us. You don't have the liberty to choose your stance. We will give you the stance with the motion, which means that there would be an Excel sheet, or it will be released, wherein your name, your stance, your opposition, the motion you're debating on, the time slots, everything will be mentioned. So don't fret about that.
Ma'am, a quick question.
Just give me 1 second. I'll ask for questions every time I'm done with the slide.
All right, cool.
So
Thank
now
you.
the last point is burden according to stance. Now, what is burden? So burden for a debater is what they're supposed to do in the course of the debate in order to win it. So my burden in a particular debate is determined by a lot of things, but the most primary thing here is my side. So my burden is determined by my side. For example, if I'm for going for the motion, my burden is to prove the validity of the motion because I'm supporting it as the proposition member. But if I'm going against the motion, my burden is to disprove the validity of the motion because I'm going against the motion. So that's your burden. But burden is also determined by a lot of other things. For example, we are discussing culture, which means your burden is also to talk about the motion from a cultural aspect because that's the theme. You can't talk a lot about the economy. You can't talk a lot about politics because that's not what the theme is about. So you would be derailing and thereby not fulfilling your burden if you choose to talk about things that are unrelated to culture. All right. Any questions are more than welcome now. Raise your hands. Don't just start unmuting yourself. Okay, Dia, I see only one. Dia, Garrick.
Yeah. So basically, my question is like there are times wherein like a certain individual wants like one-on-one arguments of 1 minute each, and the other person might not want to do that. I mean, they might want to directly go for a 3 minute long speech. So what do you do then?
Okay, no, there is no such thing as the speaker's discretion in the format. The format is definitive and it's determined for once and for all, which means if you want to ask POIs, if you want to interject the other party, you can't because the format doesn't permit that. If you want to have a one-on-one with the other person, you can't do that because the format doesn't permit. You can only do what the format explicitly specifies, which is give 3 minute long speeches, two of them, and get done with it.
Okay, done. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Okay. Garrick, do you want to get your question?
Yes,
Like,
my
yeah.
question is that when we are discussing about the nationwide topics, like for example, we are upholding some kind of tragic incident that happened in some part of the world, in some part of the country. So we won't be like, can't we give things like our what is our means feeling about what we feel about the topic, or we will tell we can tell by ourselves that who must be due for this topic, or what we will have to take from our sources, like some trusted sources.
Okay. So you can definitely not just tell, I mean, you can't just run the case based on what you think should happen. It also has to have some logical validity and also some reasoning that is difficult to deconstruct. Because if it's your opinion, but it's not very well founded, then it's easy for the other side to deconstruct it. So it's not so
Like
much about what you think, it's more about defending, it's more about fulfilling the burden that has been put on you. For example, if there is a motion which says this house believes that uh, this house believes that statues of nationally significant figures should not be erected for various reasons. Okay, this house opposes the erection, like the construction of nationally significant people. For example, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's, right, or Subhash Chandra Bose's. Now, I don't care about now if I am a debater and if I'm a participant. Nobody cares about what I think is right as an individual, as a person. But as a debater, I have been given a stance which is for or against, and I have to debate keeping in mind that stance, regardless of what my personal preference is. Do you understand?
like the we are taking sources which has picked up some different sides, but I feel that one side which must be taken up by ourselves is not yet given, so we can't discuss on that.
Actually, your voice is not very loud for me, so I have to. I'm struggling to listen to what you're saying. Can you just put it in the chat so that it's clearer to me?
Fine.
Okay. Is there another question, or can we move on? Okay, apparently not. Moving on. Now, this is extremely important again, how to approach a motion, right? So I think the problem with the motion is that people oftentimes confuse the theme with the motion, and then they're perpetually asking questions about, oh, when will you release the motion? We need to prepare accordingly, yada yada. I think one thing that you need to understand is that the motion is irrelevant to you right now at this phase, because right now you're only supposed to concern yourself with the theme. So I am trying to tell you how you are going to approach a motion once you've given the motion, because it's important for you to know, given that you won't have a lot of time to dissect the motion and then come up with a case. So I'm going to give you a way of doing it, a structure that you can possibly follow if you haven't debated previously. But this does not mean that you start fixating on a motion, right? You still are like figuring the theme out. It's just for the time. I mean, this piece of advice that I'm going to give you through this slide is for the time when the motions are released. So just keep this in mind. You can write it down somewhere if you want. Whenever you are given a motion, and you will see there is an example of a motion in on the same slide at the bottom. This house, THP is just basically this house prefers. This house prefers guilt society over shame society. Now, I don't want you to understand what guilt society is and what shame society is. That's not the purpose. The purpose is for you to understand the structure of a motion and what a motion looks like if you're debating for the first time. So the motion would always start with this house. This house is just basically uh, your actor in the motion, who is an actor who does something. For example, this actor prefers guild society, so they prefer something over something else, right? So the actor can be anybody. For example, the actor could be the government, the actor could be the world at large, the actor could be the citizens of a country. This you can determine. Okay, you can determine who the actor is according to the motion. For example, this house prefers guild society over shame society. This motion does not specify who is the actor. Some motions do. For example, some motions will say this house as the feminist movement will ban X. X could be whatever. But here you are being told that this house is the feminist movement. Do you understand? This house as the feminist movement. So that's an actor motion where you are already told who this house is. But some oftentimes you are not told what this house is. At that time, you can always take a guess. But guess doesn't mean that you by your own discretion choose whatever you want. You also have to rationalize it. So you can't say this house prefers guilt society over shame society, and we are talking about India because we want to. We are thinking of this house as India. No, you have to give me an explanation for why you think it should be only India and not the global society at large. Why shouldn't we talk of this house as a global society? Now, excuse me for just 1 second. I just like 1 second, and I'll be back. Meanwhile, any questions, put them in the chat. Yes, okay. So this is it about how a motion starts. Any motion would start like this. So don't be like, don't keep wondering what this house is. That's what this house means. Now, after that, the motion becomes pretty simple. It would say something, right? Like it would say this house prefers something to something else, or this house opposes. So there are various types of motions that are there generally. So one is this house opposes or supports, and how it's generally written in short is THS or THO, right? And then there's this house as somebody, like this house as feminist movement, for example. This is an actor motion. In an actor motion, you are always supposed to benefit the actor, because I am somebody, right? This house as somebody means that I have taken the identity of that somebody as a debater. This house is the feminist movement. This means that I am the feminist movement. So I can't harm the feminist movement through what I'm saying. Do you understand? So that's why you have to keep in mind the interest of the actor when the actor is specified in an actor motion. Okay. And then there are other types of motion like THR, which is this house regrets. This house regrets. What else? This house THBT, which is this house believes that. So you get the gist, right? These are the types of motions that you will oftentimes.
Mama, quick question.
Yeah, right. Ask me the question.
Ma'am, if there is a topic like Gotham would be safer if Batman abandoned his no killing rule, would it be an actor motion?
Could you repeat your motion?
If there is a topic, Gotham would be safer if Batman abandoned his abandoned his no killing rule, would it be an actor motion?
Okay, depends, right? Depends. If the motion says this house as Gotham believes, in that case, you are Gotham and you believe in something. So you have to, but if it says this house believes that Gotham yada yada, then it's not an active motion. So an active motion always starts as this house as somebody or something. That's the key word. Do you understand? See, every motion has an actor. Every motion would have an actor because every motion is about people, right? It would include people as stakeholders. But some motions clarify who the actor is, whose interest you are supposed to talk about. For example, this house as the feminist movement, this house as Stalin, this house as Hitler, this house as the prime minister of a developing country, like this, right? So this house has Gotham, this house has Iron Man, this house has Captain America, whatever. But this house as somebody is the key here. Okay. Now, about approaching a motion then. So once you've figured what is the type of motion by THP, THR, I already told you what these abbreviations are for. Then you go ahead and figure what are the various key terms in this motion, right? So if I have been given this motion and I can't make any sense of what this particular keyword means, it doesn't mean that I will approach you as my coach writer, right? Saying that, oh, your motion doesn't make sense. I don't know what you're saying. Because the role, the responsibility of any debater is to look at the motion and get and just enlist the thing that they don't understand. For example, maybe you don't understand what a guilt society is, and maybe you don't understand what a shame society is. So you need to research, in which case, right? Research becomes very important to figure things that you don't already know about from the motion. Okay. So even within culture, there's a lot of stuff like cancel culture is something which you might not know anything about. So you might have to research. In this case, you will have to research. So first find out what is it that I have to research about, right? So this is how you go about, like this is how you approach a motion when you're given the motion in order to make sense of it. Now, so if you when I talk about the reference to the internet, I don't mean to say that you will have to find the arguments on the internet. I only mean that if you don't know something in the motion, you don't know what it means. For example, the guilt society and the shame society. You just find out what these things mean. You don't have to find arguments. You don't have to find why a guilt society is better than a shame society. That is something that you're supposed to find for your own self. That is an argument that you're supposed to create for your own self. The only thing you are referring to the internet for then is to find out the W in terms of the what and not the why of things, right? What is guilt society? Once I know what is guilt society, I should be able to tell why a guilt society is better than a shame society. Is that understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think this is it about approaching a motion. I hope this helps. So you look at a motion, you look at which type of motion it is, prefers, regrets, opposes, supports, yada, yada. Then you go ahead and look at, okay, another thing that you can do in a motion, and this is the second point that I'm discussing, is that you find a problem statement in the motion. Do you understand? For example, any motion is being debated because there is a problem at the crux of it, right? So this house supports democracy. Let's say the motion was as simple as this, and not necessarily this house prefers guild society. This house supports democracy. I'm sure everybody knows democracy here because all of you are seventh grade, from seventh grade. Okay, this house supports democracy is just basically this motion where you're supposed to, from a proposition, either support democracy, and from opposition and like not support democracy, which means you can probably say that some other form of government is better than democracy, or you don't even have to say that. You can just say, oh, we don't support democracy as an ideal form of governance because there's corruption, there's still not free and fair elections, and so on and so forth. In this case, you can't just dive into the argumentation. If I have been given this motion, what do I do? How do I approach this motion? What I'm going to do with the motion is that I will see what is the word that I need to define in this motion. For example, this house supports democracy. Don't just presume that people will know what a democracy is. Okay, just define democracy for yourself. Because if I want to support democracy, then as the member of government, I am going to be more charitable with my understanding of democracy. Do you understand? Now, look at it like this. If somebody supports India as a country, or if somebody likes India, then they are going to define India very positively. Agreed? Like India is a culture, India has a diverse set of people, India has a rich history, India is a resilient country. But somebody who doesn't like India, right? Somebody who dislikes India, then they will say that, oh, India has always been colonized and India has still not been able to decolonize its sensibilities. India still does not let go of its British education system. India still would not let go of English as the predominant mode of communication, so on and so forth, right? Predominant language used, right? So there are various ways of looking at the things that are already understood. For example, if there is a motion that mentions India somewhere, you might choose to not define India because you think people know what India is. But understand that even if people know what India is, for example, in this case, democracy is, they still will not paint it the way you want to paint the picture of a democracy, because they are against the motion. You are for the motion, which means if they are going to villainize democracy, to avoid that, you have to automatically define democracy as a good place. So you have to find ways and find the positives of democracy in order to define democracy, so that the other side does not win the debate just by villainizing democracy. Is that understood? So defining terms becomes important.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And then find the problem in a particular motion. Like I said, any motion is a motion to be debated on because there is a problem at the crux which you are seeking to solve. Now, this house supports democracy. What is the problem? You find the problem. Like, why would somebody not support democracy? There have to be some problems, right? Which maybe the other side will bring up. Think about those problems. The what's, the whys, the hows, and whens of the motion, right? For example, what is democracy? Ask yourself that question, answer that question in your speech. Why is democracy important? Why could democracy be bad as well? So those kinds of questions you can ask for like a little bit of headway on how to go about the debate, right? Okay, then. This is it about approaching a motion. Are there any questions that I might have to address with respect to this only? I'm not asking random for like random questions, just pertinent to what I just discussed. Okay, none.
Ma'am, I had a doubt regarding replying speech.
So put it in the chat. If it's a doubt that's not that's not immediately relevant, put it in the chat. Okay. Now another important thing that I want to discuss for today's session is what is a theme in a debate. Okay, 3 participants raised their hand. Wait, Yashika, what is your question? Yashika, are we around? I am unable to hear you, although I see that you're unmuted. Dhruv, can you ask me a question while Yashika tries?
Yes, ma'am. My question is, in a debate, the motion, what exactly is it? Because a theme is the topic of the debate.
Okay,
And-
your question is very relevant right now because that's what we're discussing in this slide that you see on the screen, the flow chart. So this will become very clear about how a theme is different from a motion, if that's what the question is.
Okay.
All right. In that case, I think it's dealt with. Yashika, you put your doubt in the chat because I can't hear you despite you having unmuted yourself. All right. What is a theme in a debate then? And how is a theme different from motion? I think there were so many questions around this particular idea yesterday. So I decided to have a slide dedicated to this exclusively. Now, what is a theme? Think of it like this. I'm going to simplify it for you so that you don't ever forget. But I'm also going to give you concrete, more relevant examples. Think of it like this. And this is an example that I gave yesterday as well. I'm just trying to reiterate it. So you have dessert, right? Like what you have after dinner. That's how you characterize dessert. But then within dessert, you have a lot of other things that you could possibly try, right? Like ice cream or some sweet, or you know better than I do, right? Like there are various types of sweets that you could consider within the category of dessert. So the dessert becomes the theme in this case. And whatever subcategories there are, they become the sub themes, or that is where the motion can be taken from. So I'll try
They're
to explain this better.
right?
Sorry, what?
Mods, right? The subtopics.
Yeah. So if the theme, so you already know about the theme, right? I mean, I've told you about it multiple times now since yesterday. The theme for qualifiers is cultural reimaginings, which means that this is your major overarching theme, which means we will not discuss economy, we will not discuss politics in the qualifiers through the topics that are given to you in the qualifiers. We will only discuss culture. Now, culture is not such a small thing. Culture has a lot of other branches. For example, culture would include religious practices of people. Culture would include the traditions, the rituals, the historical influences. All of that makes a part of your culture. Your Bollywood, cinematic representations, whatever influences you, Indian literature, all of that makes uh, culture, right? People, if there are any people who are studying psychology in class 12, I bet you know what culture is and how it's different, like how it's a multifaceted concept, right? So culture includes a lot of things, which means that the culture in and of itself is a theme, but it would have various sub themes, various subtopics. So culture is this umbrella for you, umbrella term, and then there are various subtopics to culture, which means there's literature, there's history, right? Like I've given you, like I've like put it in the flow chart, and then even within literature, you could have various types of motions based on who you're approaching in literature. For example, sometimes you're approaching the writers through the motion. This house believes that Indian writers should not uh, talk about politics. So here we're talking about the writers. But in another motion, I could say this house believes that true crime stories do more harm than good to the readers. So now I'm still talking about literature, but I'm talking about the readers and not the writer. So there are various ways of coming to a motion, even through in the sub theme. So that's how you come to a motion. There are themes, there are sub themes, and then I make a motion out of a sub theme for you to debate on during the qualifiers. Now look at this flowchart for 1 minute, think it through, ask me any questions after that. Give me 1 second. Okay, were you all able to understand? Like a lot of you had doubts about what a theme is and how a theme helps in building motions for a particular tournament. Is this clear to you all? Do you get the process we will be
Yes, ma'am.
following and
Yes,
why
yes,
we
ma'am.
are laying emphasis on the themes? So if you study the theme thoroughly, then you will be able to understand the various subtopics in the theme, which means if you are studying culture, then slowly and steadily you will also learn about literature as part of culture, history as part of culture, Bollywood as part of culture, which means you will have a lot of knowledge. So once you have had and once you've discussed, once you've read about a lot of these things, the dealing with the motions becomes very easy, which means you don't have to care about the motion so much in that case. That's why since yesterday I've been saying, as long as you research your theme thorough, like in a thoroughgoing manner, comb through it, and then it'll be easy for you to deal with the motions because the motions are going to be from the theme and nothing beyond that. So that's why the emphasis on themes and not so much on the motions. All right. All right, moving on. So here, there are some ground rules for round one, which I'm going to go through really quickly because I've already talked about them at length in the
Oh, ma'am, I have a question.
about.
Ma'am, you said that we should be researching about the theme. Where would you recommend we research?
Okay, that's coming up. That's coming up in the following slides. So wait for that. So
Okay.
first of all, the ground rules. Each speaker can speak only for 3 minutes, twice meaning reply speech and the main speech. The adjudicator will give feedback after the debate. This is not relevant. This is a typo. So you can excuse that. They will give you the feedback. But what is important is the third point, that the adjudicator's decision is the final decision, which means you don't get to confute it. You don't get to say that, oh, I was winning, but the adjudicator was wrong, so I lost out on the round. What happens then is that it's not so much the problem that gets created, it's more about how you're not able to absorb the feedback that the adjudicator can really help you with. So to accept the results and to learn from your mistakes is what is highly recommended, because confuting what the adjudicator says or being in the denial mode of, oh, I wasn't losing the round really, is not really helpful. The adjudicator will tap once when 3 minutes are over, which means that after your time is up, you will be given a hint. For example, I could possibly clap, or I can give you a tap, or maybe there'd be a timer running which will make a sound after the 3 minutes have elapsed, in which case you will be expected to just wrap up. Don't take liberties with time, because one, anything that you say beyond 3 minutes is just not taken into consideration. So what happens is that even if the adjudicator is very kind in letting you finish what you have to say, they are still not going to note down everything you say after the third minute, like after the 3 minutes are over. So anything that you say beyond 3 minutes is absolutely not given any, I mean, we don't lend our ears to what you're saying as adjudicators after the time limit. So no point. Now, any argument presented beyond the time won't be considered, like I said right now. However, the speaker can complete his or her sentence after the tap. Now, when I say you have to complete within 3 minutes, I don't necessarily mean that you leave a sentence midway. And I mean, I'm unable to make sense of it as a judge. You can complete the sentence, which would be another 5-10 seconds, which is okay, but don't go beyond the time limit on by intent, like by deliberately. Don't do that through my intention that, oh, the adjudicator will listen to me, so might as well finish. No, they won't. Okay. On to the research tips now. The question that was asked just now should be clarified after we're through with this slide. So, see, research becomes important, and research becomes important not in finding arguments, but finding about the topic, the certain issues that are mentioned in the motion. This is very important. Don't try to make an entire debate out of plagiarizing content from the internet. Just just understand the concepts through the internet. That said, how do you then research? Once you have gotten the motion, just please use very reliable sites for research and keep a record of the sources. So if I have used a particular site and I found some very relevant data there, which I could use in my speech, you should also possibly keep your source with you, because sometimes the adjudicator might ask you that what was your source when you went ahead and said this. This is very unlikely, because in the 3 minute, I mean, in this format, you don't have to mention source with every single fact you mention. But if you are giving me statistical information, I would expect you to cite the source, right? So if you're saying 40% of the women in India are working and 60% are housewives, I would need you to cite the source, because I need to know the validity of what you're saying, right? I need that to be corroborated. Okay. Now, secondly, you have to research keeping in mind all the possible dimensions of the case. Now, what does this mean? Sometimes what happens is that we get carried away excessively by one particular aspect of a particular thing. For example, like I was talking about the statues, because very recently there has been a lot of investment in this symbolic national pride of erecting statues, of redoing the parliament, making it prettier. So you could possibly, so if there was a motion which said that, oh, this the preservation of cultural preservation happens through the construction of such statues, or that it adds to national glory, then I shouldn't just restrict myself to talking about how, oh, there's a lot of money wasted on these statues which could be used for the poor. I mean, this is one very relevant argument, but what is some other argument that you might run? Do you understand? Don't just fixate on one argument. If you think there was a lot of money that was invested on a statue, and this is a very relevant point, no matter how relevant you think this point is, no matter how exceptionally good you think this point is, no matter how much of confidence you have on this point winning you the debate, still don't make that the only argumentation that you have. Still have two, three points more which you can debate on, because any argument can be easily rebutted and deconstructed if the other side is good enough, which means you don't want to feel at a loss just because you had only one argument. If one argument goes away, you still have two, three else other arguments to bank on, so you're still safer. That's why research the topic from various dimensions. The political dimension of things. For example, if we make statues, then it doesn't become political controversy as well. Because why do you make such a tall statue of Sardar Patel, and why not Gandhi? Because Gandhi is the father of the nation, or some such thing, right? That is the political dimension of things. Then you could go ahead and talk about the economic dimension as to how there is limited budget that developing countries have, and spending them in the statues is not the best thing, because people are literally dying of hunger. So first solve that and then talk about the glory, right? And then third could be on some other issue, like environmental issue, as to how constructing such a tall statue and getting so many people to work on it, it also requires a lot of environmental expense, right? With all the work that goes into it, and all the, I mean, there's always exploitation in constructing something, insofar as there's a lot. I mean, you could find dimensions for that as well. Like there's limited resources. If you employ these resources in building statues, then there's a scarcity elsewhere. That can be an environmental approach. So that's how you find various dimensions to the same argument. And this is what research is for. So like make your argument multifaceted and not unidimensional. All right. Now, certain sites to ignore that you simply shouldn't refer to, and certain sites that you can definitely refer to because these are good ones. So some sites you can definitely refer to is Reuters, Britannica, in even like Beyond is a nice site. Any other newspaper that you might be reading is a good source of information for national, international news. The Hindu, Indian Express. I don't have to tell you the names. Now, that being things that you should do. Now let's talk about how not to research. One, don't stick to one source of information. What does this mean? Even if I have the most reliable site I'm on, for example Reuters, or for example Quint, I don't want to take all my information from that one site, because human bias cannot be overlooked. Even if I think this is a very fair analysis of things, I can still refer to other sources to get like multiple views, right? And not restrict my like my conception of a particular issue because of this one source. I want to refer to multiple sources. For example, you could go ahead and read an article on Quint, and then you could watch a YouTube video on the same issue by Vion or like infographics or whatever. So like have various sources to refer to. Secondly, research the background and not the arguments. This is something that I'm like, this is the third time that I'm saying it now, but that's because that's how important it is. Just research the background that you need in order to make arguments. Don't actually look for arguments on the internet. You will find very bad arguments. You will by default lose out on the tournament, because people who come up with their own arguments are definitely better because it's their own argument, so they're able to analyze it better. But if you take it from the internet, there's only so much you can do to analyze it, because it's a borrowed argument. You wouldn't know how to analyze it or defend it. So it's better to have your own arguments. It's only for the background knowledge that you can refer to the internet, right? And then thirdly, there's some sites that you should avoid, and these are sites where people can actually go ahead and just give their opinions. So there is no validity to the data that you find there. For example, Quora. Quora is where anybody can post their opinions. So steer clear of Quora when you're trying to find some objective data on the length, the height, the expenditure that happened of the in the statues, etc., or like whatever other thing that you might have to find information on. And then don't go to like Reddit, and don't go to Wikipedia, because these are not reliable sites. These are all opinion based content. This is all opinion based content. Now, any questions with respect to research then before I move on? Okay, 3 participants
Yeah.
raising their hand. Arnav,
Am I
followed by
audible now?
Yashika, you are, yeah.
Can I
Yes,
ask my
ma'am.
question?
No, let Yashika finish because she's been trying to speak for quite some time now.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, like you said, like we should not focus on one side for all our information and research. So from like the different sides have different opinions to the same topic. So how will we decide on which research is most relevant?
Okay, so see, it's never about deciding to use one piece of information against another. I find that some sites say that Sardar Patel's statue was made in this much money. Like, if I want to find very objective details, like what was the cost of making the statue,
Yeah.
then I can go to the government sources, because that's the best thing, right? And I will be able to tell. I mean, you're able to tell they don't make mistakes with uh, the figures. They won't give you a different figure. But when it comes to some opinions also, like Quint is saying something, maybe they're saying that it was wrong to make the statues, and there's Mint that is perhaps saying it was okay to make the statues, then I can weigh the arguments by myself and decide for myself. That's where your work comes in. Once you've researched and once you are privy to various types of opinions, now you can form your own opinion based on all that you found. You don't have to agree or disagree with one thing or the other. You just have to come up with your own argumentation, and that is going to be your own process of doing things. Whatever you think is easier to defend is the right thing to do.
So from a fact, we can take out our own opinion and talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So you can't skew the
Thank you.
facts. You can't say that, oh no, this statue is not the tallest statue ever, because it is. It is. It is.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. But you can definitely go ahead and give me a different opinion, a different outlook. You can definitely say that poverty is not going to get solved just because you're not building statues. Okay, there's different things that you have to do. Maybe anything, right? I'm not also not giving the best argumentation right now. But then that's how you can argue about things. I mean, it's always subjective debating, but the objective details, of course, should not be false.
Okay.
Arnav, followed by Dhruv.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I believe the possible dimensions of the arguments also include the political view. Political view. I quite did not understand the political view of the argument. So could you make me understand it properly or something?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So even if we're talking about these statues, and if it was the right step to take for the government to have undertaken, what you can definitely go ahead and talk about politically is that if you construct one statue of one nationally significant person from the struggle for independence, for example, Sardar Patel, there's still Mahatma Gandhi who doesn't have the tallest statue to himself, right? Which might be a good or a bad argument. I'm not talking about the quality of argument right now. I'm just trying to convey how an argument can be built in any dimension. So this becomes a political controversy, right? Wherein we could say that, oh, this is a right wing party or this is a left wing party, and that's why they are more inclined to build statues for people that they think of as better national freedom fighters or some such thing, right? Do you understand? So this becomes a controversy. So you can say that actually construction of statues leads to a lot of political conflict where parties fight between each other because their ideologue statue has not been erected, which means it takes a lot of the attention away from the medical healthcare facilities that you can make better in the post-COVID era, the education that you can make better, so on and so forth. Do you understand? So this is a political argument, because here I'm saying that politically you will be distracted as leaders after, because there is going to be so much debating around if it was the right thing to make the statue. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dhruv, is there a question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, lower your hands in that case. Everybody lower your hands if there's no question. Uh, okay, why am I changing this slide? This is the one we're supposed to discuss. What are you supposed to do in the debating room, and what is it that you should avoid? One, about the do's. Debate respectfully without hurting sentiments. I think this is extremely important given the context here of the Indian Debating League. We'll be talking about the various aspects of India culture, and we definitely feel very vehemently about things that things that are very immediately concerning us, right? Which, for example, so when we're talking about the Indian culture, it has an obvious resonance because we are a part of the Indian culture. So you're bound to feel very strongly about certain things, but understand that as a debater, you are not saying what you feel about a certain thing. You are saying what you're supposed to say according to the side that you've been given. So please don't become too sensitive about this, and please don't end up becoming very hurtful towards the other people just because you want to win the debate. Okay, also please be well researched in this area and be well read as well without before you start making comments on another culture which you don't possibly know a lot about, you don't have friends from, etc, etc. Okay, now secondly, ask for 30 to 45 seconds before starting your speech if you feel like you need some preparation. For example, a lot of the people, at least in the junior category, were saying that, ma'am, we don't have enough experience to probably go ahead and engineer a reply speech in no time. So can you please tell us how to go about it? I think the simple thing is that you keep listening to the other side and what they're saying in their constructive speech, and then ask for 45 seconds if need be to the adjudicator, saying that, oh, I need to gather my thoughts panel before I start with my reply speech. You don't have to dive right in and then see it not pan out well. In fact, what you can do is just like take a step back and gather your thoughts and then go ahead and deliver the reply speech. That's doable and that's permissible. Okay. Now, third thing is not relevant in this particular from this particular post. This is for semis and finals. There are no POIs in the qualifiers, so don't pay heed to that point. Now, on the idea of don'ts, then what are the things that you're not supposed to do? Do not make random guess in the debate by anticipating the winner midway. It leads to self-doubt. So sometimes what happens is that you think that the other side is making a really valid argument which I have no response to, because you are in that headspace now, you actually cannot find a response when if you were not downplaying yourself so much, you might have been able to find a response. So don't be too intimidated by another speaker if they are very eloquent or like if you think they're making the right points, because every point is debatable and it's rebuttable. Because if it is not, then it's not a good debate. Every point is not supposed to be foolproof. It's supposed to be one that the other side can engage with. So just think about that. Don't keep guessing who the winner is in the middle of the round, because that just leads to self-doubt. Secondly, don't fixate on one argument as the cornerstone of the debate. Evaluation is subjective. What does this mean? This is very important. Sometimes what we end up doing is that we give a lot of weightage to one argument because we think this argument is the most important, which is going to win us this round. Even if your argument was the most relevant and you were able to analyze it well in the 3 minutes, but that was the only argument that you analyzed in the 3 minutes, it's likely that the adjudicator will not think of it as important. Because consider this, the idea of what is the value of an argument is subjective. What you think of as important might not be what I think of as important as well as a judge. So it's always better to demarcate time for yourself. I will take only one exact minute to explain one particular constructor that I might have, which means you don't want to waste all of your time explaining just one argument, because even if it's the best argument, like I said, because see, if you're running one argument, only one argument, it's very easy for the opposition to deconstruct your case, because it's just one argument that they have to get to the crux of and then undo it from there, right? But if you have multiple arguments, then it's also more work for the other side, and that's why the debate becomes more comparative, and it also becomes like more like you are able to deliver a more competent case. All right. Any questions with respect to this? Although I think this was self-explanatory to a very large extent. Any
No, ma'am.
questions? No? Okay, great.
ma'am.
All right, so this is not something that I wanted to discuss today, actually. This was for tomorrow, but because we still have 9 minutes left, are there any questions that I might have to address? Because this is something that I'd like to get into tomorrow itself. I mean, this is something that will require explanation, and then because we have only 9 minutes left, I'd probably have to stop midway, which I don't want. Any questions? I'm open to questions for the next 9 minutes. From me, that's it for today. I just
Ma'am, I
wanted
have
to,
a question.
yeah.
Ma'am, so you said, ma'am, so according to the mail, it said that there would be no, like the debates on Saturday, Sunday, right?
I didn't get your question.
Ma'am, so the days in which we'll be doing the India League, will that also include Saturday, Sunday? Because it said only weekdays. And
Yeah, I
if
think
it does,
The Saturday, Sundays we are working. Yeah, I mean, you are attending trainings on Saturday, Sunday.
no, ma'am, the debates.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
will-
Saturday, Sunday is no exception actually. So don't think if there is like if there's some festival in between, maybe that'd be considered an off because of the festivities. There's a lot of festivities happening around you, but I think that's been taken care of. So Saturday, Sundays, yes, you can have a debate on Saturday, Sunday as well. No exceptions made.
Okay, so then since grade I think 7 only has 1 day of research time, so then will we get the motion in the morning and then we'll have the whole day to research and the next day present, or that day only will have to
Yeah, so like if you've been promised a certain time period, you'd be given that before you're called for the debate. So it's not like, I mean, if you've been promised a day, you will be given those 24 hours, come what may.
Okay.
Any other questions that I might?
Yes, ma'am. A point of information basically means the source, right? Where we are getting the information from. Source, basically.
No, point of information is just you asking questions to the other team. But this is irrelevant
all right.
for the qualifiers because there is no POI in the qualifiers.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other question?
Yes, ma'am. If I am the last to deliver the replying speech, will it be a reply to my opponent's primary speech or his or her replying speech?
Okay, this could be a mix of both, right? So it's about prioritizing what you think you need to respond to. So it's about listening to both of their speeches, seeing what they're laying emphasis on, and seeing how they're trying to undo my case, and particularly rebutting those things that you think, which, if not responded to, will lead to your loss. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You're welcome. Any other question?
Yes, ma'am.
I think the PPT will be shared, but not immediately after this session. Only after the trainings are done, I guess. Can't share right now because there's stuff that I'm still going to discuss, and then there's going to be an influx of questions which we don't want right now. Any other question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, like a day prior, we'll get the motion on which we have to speak. So we'll also get to know that we will speak for the motion or against the motion.
Yeah, you will be given your stance. So when you're given your motion, you will also be given the time slots. You will also be given who your opponent is, like their names, and you will be given your stance. Yes.
So,
Okay.
ma'am,
And ma'am,
will we be given any date or can we choose the dates?
No, you can't choose the dates. This is all on the orgcom, like on the organizing committee, and everything will be specified. There's really, I mean, your discretion will not be considered, unfortunately, because it'll be a mess if everybody
So,
goes to give their
because
references.
like we have school and because of school, like we may have to like miss out on our like normal school classes.
Okay,
for
sure.
this.
So
Will
if
it
okay, so once the schedule
Yes.
is out, if you have any other problems with the schedule with respect to having exams, having coaching, having school, you can reach out to the Ogly number, and you will also be on a WhatsApp group by then. So you can raise those concerns once the schedule is out.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, I just had this question. Like, it might be a little foolish, but like, say, suppose the first speaker defines the topic. Say, suppose it's culture, so the first speaker defines it, and then the second speaker, so you're supposed to introduce the topic again or not.
Okay, if by introduction you mean just reiterate the entire motion, not needed. But yeah, you could definitely. Okay, this is called. I didn't want to get into this because this is more of like parliamentary format thing. But so sometimes, like I said, every term can have a connotation. So if I want to support democracy, I'm going to talk only positively of democracy. But if I'm against democracy, I prefer some other form of governance, I'm probably going to deny any merit in democracy. So it's about how you perceive a particular term, which means if the government has really villainized something or really glorified something, you might want to offset that extremism by counter characterizing or counter defining, which means that if the government in this house supports democracy, uh, if the government says that, oh, democracy is everything good, and it's really been polarized, that all the bad has been like pushed under the carpet, you probably want to retrieve that, right? Because that's what you're capitalizing on. So you can say, panel, we think government is going wrong with this and that, and we think this is a better and more realistic way of defining democracies. I hope that makes sense.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other? Okay.
ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, are we allowed to use interjections in our speech?
No interjections.
Okay.
No interjections.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, one by one, could you unmute yourself? Because, okay, you have really difficult name. Swapna Neil, right?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I asked my question. Sure.
Okay, yeah, lower your hand in that case. Manya, is it the same with you? I think I did answer a question of yours.
Yes, ma'am, my doubt is clear.
Okay. Arshia, can I help you?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, while writing the speech, we need to write it in our own words, right?
Yes, yeah.
Like-
No plagiarism, please. Please don't lift stuff from the internet. Adjudicators are smart enough to cut through that. Also, there is no value addition in such an experience.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Should we call it a day? Are there no other questions? I don't see any hands. Okay, in that case, we're right on time. Thank you all for joining in. I'll see you all tomorrow. Good night. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.